When I was 38, I was diagnosed with advanced breast cancer. I was required to go through 3 years of treatment, which included 5 surgeries, chemo, radiation, and a bone marrow transplant. This left me very weak, very fatigued, and nauseated, and it caused me a great deal of pain and anguish. Well, as I was going through this, I ended up in the hospital for 3 weeks because I had caught 3 different viruses and I had no immune system. During this time, I could tell that my body was in the process of dying, and I was afraid to be alone while in this process of transitioning over to the other side. So I asked the doctor if he would release me from all the apparatuses and tubes and let me go home and be with my mom. And he did allow me to do this, and when I was at my mom's house, I was in so much pain that I began to pray that I might be released from it. I felt like my kidneys were coming through my back. I was cold, I was hot, I was nauseated, and I just wanted to go home and be in heaven. And as I prayed, God heard my prayer and answered it, not in the way I'd expected, but in a beautiful way. I was suddenly released from my body, and I found my spirit hovering on the ceiling. I looked down below and I saw a body in the bed, and I realized it was mine. As I was pondering on this, a man appeared to me on my right side, dressed in white. He motioned for me to follow him. He seemed like a man of good character, and so I did. We went through the ceiling, and that didn't hurt, and we ended up in a beautiful heavenly meadow. There was beautiful lush green grass and roses on all sides of different colors. I went and I cupped the roses, and they began to sing to me in an ethereal voice, welcoming me to this new dimension. As we traveled in this meadow, I saw a beautiful city up in the distance and asked if we could go there. Instantly, in a moment, we were there. The streets were paved with gold. There were beautiful buildings with diamonds in the mortar, and I saw angels on both sides of these buildings on different grassy areas. They were talking and conversing one with another. They seemed happy and contented. The man continued to motion for me to follow him. We went into one of the buildings, and there in different rooms I was able to meet different people. I met ancestors, family, friends that had passed on. I was able to see a little bit of my pre-earth life, in which I learned that I had gained a lot of my musical talents in the pre-existence. I also met heavenly figures that I won't go into, but it isn't entailed in this book that I've written, My Walk Through Heaven. It gives a greater detail and more than I can go through on this time period. Well, as I was taken to many places, the one that stands out to me the most was my time with the Savior. How it happened that I met him, I was taken back to a time in my childhood when I was young, and I could see my younger self. I was about 10 years old, and I could see that she was frightened. And I was hovering on the ceiling, and I looked to see what she might be frightened by, and there I saw an army of evil marching towards her. Although she couldn't see them, I could register that they were there. They looked very evil, and they had instruments of war, and I thought they might attack her or me, so I was frightened for both of us. As I was pondering on this, the thought came to me to pray for deliverance, and as I did, I heard a beautiful chuckle to my right-hand side. I glanced over, and I found that the Savior was standing beside me. I wanted to look at him, but I was afraid. I was afraid that the army of evil might attack me. I was also a little bit afraid about what God might think about me as a person. What would be his reaction to me? Well, as I sat there for a very long time, I finally decided that no matter what, I was going to turn and look to him, because intermittently he had chuckled and given me the feeling that he found it humorous that I was more afraid of evil than I had faith in God. So I did. I turned and I looked, and the most beautiful sight came to my eyes. And that was, he had this beautiful light that streamed 5 to 6 feet out from his body. He had beautiful blue eyes that were streaming blue. And he greeted me with such unconditional love. There was no shame or blame or condemnation towards me, only pure unconditional love. He encouraged me to turn around and look backwards, and when I did, I saw that the army of evil had fled. As I looked back to him, he said to me, "Kim, look to the light and live." And with that came the feeling that if we really want to live, we need to love one another, love ourselves, forgive one another, forgive ourselves, read scriptures, pray, be kind to one another, do acts of service. There are many ways that we can look to His light and live. Well, He also encouraged me and said, "What would you ask of me?" I found this a great request, that the Savior of the world would be asking me how He could serve me. He was setting the example of service. And so I told Him I'd like to know what every good emotion felt like to its perfected state. And so He encouraged me to put my arm into His light, and it would be as a grid of emotions. And I did. As I extended my arm, I felt perfect love, peace, joy, hope, virtue, forgiveness. All these beautiful emotions flow up my arm and into my being, and I felt them to the celestial level. What a glorious experience, and I decided it was worth living well to feel these emotions. Then He took me to another place, not a hard time in my childhood, but a hard time in His life in mortality, and that was His crucifixion. I was very humbled by this scene. I saw Him nailed on the cross in the wrist and the palm, and also in His feet. I saw the crown of thorns on His head and the gash in His side. He was groaning in agony. He wasn't laying peacefully as many pictures portray. His mouth was stretched wider than I could imagine, and He was trembling like this, to such agony that I knelt below Him and I wanted to free Him. But then He let me know that that was what He was there for, was to free me and each one of us from the burdens that we carry. He asked me to give Him my pain, and I said, "No, let me take some of yours, you have enough." But He once again told me that that was the reason He was born into this world. And so I gave Him my pain, and He took it on, and it came as a black cloud into His chest, and He thrust backward as He took it on. But then I was relieved from the pain that I was in. I felt His love for me. I felt His unconditional love. And what I realized from this experience is He wants all of us to be happy and healthy and free from the burdens that we carry. He just asks us to bring them to Him and lay them at His feet, and He will lift them. So if you carry burdens that are greater than what you want to deal with, go to Him in prayer and ask Him to lift them from you, that you might feel the freedom of peace. And this is my witness, that He lives and that He loves us, that He's there for us. Thank you. A carpenter's heart healed me today. A carpenter's hands molded living clay. With eyes of love and tools I could not see, He cleansed and healed the woundedness in me. I walked in the darkness, He offered me light. His faith quenched my fear and gave my blindness sight, giving color, depth, and joy to all I see. His love illuminates the best in me. Now I felt the healer's heart. I'm becoming now His work of art. Now I felt the healer's hands. His miracle within my soul expands. The healer's heart, the healer's hands. May I always live to be the masterpiece He saw in me. This carpenter, this man from Galilee. The healer's heart, the healer's hands. Now I felt the healer's heart. I'm becoming now His work of art. Now I felt the healer's hands. His miracle within my soul expands. The healer's heart.